Chapter 10. Rainbows and Illusions. Spurion the you-name-it was a braggart. By the time the sun was fully up, he had rewritten history as Jayden knew it, and managed to convince Cedra that he was nothing short of the great thoughts incarnate. The red-headed girl, or woman, though she was currently acting much more like a starstruck girl in his opinion, sat across the fire with her attention riveted to the dark-haired man as he explained to them the finer points of dragon riding. The problem was that Jayden still had no idea if his stories were true, or if he was the most outlandish liar the world had ever seen. That the man was Spurion, he had finally, grudgingly, admitted was true. The wizard's knowledge of history was too well-rounded to deny that he had lived through it. There was also the matter of the cushioned rocking chair that had appeared from seemingly nowhere, along with a decanter of brandy. Pipeweed, smoke from which now filled the little cave, he kept in a pocket of his robe like any normal man. Apparently the arcane variety was not quite the same. Some of his stories, though, all of which painted him as the hero, were a bit much. The braggadocious conjurer was currently droning theatrically about one of his own experiences, surprise, with a dragon.
The largest, bravest, boldest gold ever to soar the skies of Irelania, the world that was whole. Beaumont, king of the dragons. I saved him from raptidons when he was a hatchling, you know. I did not want him growing up overzealous for flesh, so I raised him on a plant-based diet, aside from the occasional grubworm as a special treat, and bocconuts, if you can believe it.
Not hardly, thought Jayden.
Still, he was a feisty devil through his threes. That's what they call a dragon's age from 300 to 400 years after hatching. He almost burned me to cinders twice on accident, once on purpose.
Cedra's eyes grew wide as saucers.
"He tried to kill you?"
she asked, rapt.
Oh, yes. I forgave him. It is simply the nature of dragons. It would steal the wicked pleasure from many of the best stories if they were as tame as house cats and only blew kisses, now wouldn't it, my dear?
Cedra laughed, the silvery tone echoing off the walls of the cave. She reminded Jayden of a child being read one of their favorite stories before nap time. He did not see what was so captivating. After all, he had been tutored by a wizard, and had never even heard half of this rubbish.
They are moody creatures, to be certain,
Spurion rambled on.
Beautiful and fascinating in so many ways, yet much too independent to mix with humans. They treat everyone according to strength of body, mind, and will, and they do not tolerate those who behave above their station. To them, anything that is unwilling to defend itself is a potential food source. They are cruel, but not unjust, stern, but not without humor, savage beasts, and brilliant minds.
The last was whispered. He had heard enough. Something about the way Cedra tilted her head and hung so intently on the wizard's every word irked him. Here he sat, after all his ordeals, having been tortured, bruised, gashed, punctured, and quite literally dead for a full day, with a man who should bring comfort and much-needed help, but instead brought wild tales of his own supposed adventures. Where was the daring wizard of whom the stories spoke? The Spurion of legend was a fierce warrior, quick to anger and relentless against his foes. The blowhard sitting before the fire, sucking his pipe and rocking slowly back and forth in his cushioned chair, had more the air of a bard about him than a wizard. How could they rely on such a man who traveled with trolls? "Can you fight Grisland, wizard?" Jayden asked quickly, somehow managing to catch him while he was taking a breath. Spurion looked to the ground almost shamefully.
No. The majority of my energy is devoted to another cause, as his should be, and his reclamation of that energy has placed an extra burden upon myself and the rest of our order. None of us are currently his equal on our own, I'm afraid.
Then what is it you offer besides stories, a pair of trolls, and comfortable furnishing? My parents are dead. The extent of Grisland's control is unknown. I was under the impression that you had come to help me take the kingdom back."
"There is power in stories, young prince,"
said Spurion with a dangerous glint in his eye. Jayden missed it. "Then perhaps you can bore Grisland to death with your tall tales. I intend to raise an army and fight."
Tall tales?
The wizard repeated, rising to his full height. The air suddenly became thick, hard to breathe. A small tremor shook the little cave, jarring dirt loose from the ceiling.
I offer lessons of history, real history, and you call them tales?
Spirion did not raise his voice, but something in his tone whispered of deadly power being restrained.
I have traveled the world telling my tales for thousands of years, in the hopes that mankind will remember, in a desperate prayer that every year on that dark day they will forgo their petty squabbles and come together to turn back those who would destroy us all. Your father did not tell you everything, boy. He did not tell you how fierce the battles have grown, how tenuous mankind's hold on Alnorda has become. Now he is gone, and with him the strength of Crysin.
Jayden was silent.
Grisland has committed worse treason than you know. Not only has he betrayed your kingdom, he has betrayed his master, his brothers, and every man, woman, and child in Alnorda. There is nothing we can do to stop him, and that makes him bold. The sacrifices that my brothers and I make for the survival of humankind take much of our strength. By shedding the restraints of his sworn duty, he has become perhaps the most powerful force in this world. That is what we are up against. I offer you more than tales, Prince. I offer all my vast knowledge. If you choose not to make use of it, you doom us all. Our survival hinges on your wisdom, your choices, the strength of your kingdom. That is why I have come. I am not here to bore you with tales, Your Highness. I am here to prepare you by whatever means I must employ. Since I cannot give you my full strength, I offer you knowledge and guidance.
At that point, Spirion's pipe rose into the air on its own and fitted itself neatly into his mouth. He took 2 puffs and blew the smoke out emphatically, as if releasing steam that had been trapped inside. Only when he sat back down did the tension finally leave the little cave. I had hoped that we could take a moment to make our introductions amiably, but if not, so be it. Since you wish to get right to the point, where do you plan to begin, Your Highness? Jayden was ashamed. Still, he had brought out the side of the wizard he had hoped to see. The fact that Spirion could not fight Grisland was a tremendous disappointment, but one wizard by his side was one more than he had a few hours ago, and what other help could Spirion offer? How many of his brothers might join them? Would they all be sympathetic to his plight? Mora. There are troops in Mora. I will use them to take back the throne. Spirion tapped the armrest of his rocking chair thoughtfully.
It is a start. There are more important things than armies to which we must attend, but it is a start.
The wizard hopped out of his chair, clapping his hands together.
No time to waste, then. Are you ready to travel?
Now?
Of course now. Every minute we remain, the opposition grows stronger.
I can hardly move. Spirion looked at him oddly.
Why the blazes not?
I'm wounded.
Wounded? Let me have a look.
Visibly annoyed, Spirion pulled back the collar of his shirt to reveal the bandages on his chest. Then, using both hands, ripped them in two with one quick pull.
What are you doing? How else do you expect me to see the damage? Hold still now.
He briefly imagined what might happen if he were to punch the wizard in the face, and reluctantly discarded the idea.
That is quite a hole you have there. How did that happen?
His eyes twitched involuntarily to Sidra, who looked like she would rather be anywhere other than where she was. Her cheeks went at least as red as the slightly curled locks of hair that framed her face. "A misunderstanding," he said. Spirion cocked a disbelieving brow, but he did not recant his words. The truth was between Sidra and himself. If she wanted to take the blame, she would. Her grateful smile was proof that she had not yet reached that point. Besides, it was entirely possible that it was an accident, or at least an honest misunderstanding. There is no easy way to do this, Spirion mumbled, placing a casual hand on his shoulder. So? Jayden looked from the hand to the wizard's eyes, suspicion growing. What are you... A warm sensation flowed into his shoulder, moving slowly down through his chest and into his abdomen. The tingling continued into his legs, reaching his feet and moving upward again. It passed through his entire body, to the tip of his head, then back down. It began to pick up speed, now pulsating everywhere at once. He could not break away. The rhythm seemed right somehow, in tune with his surroundings. It was almost as if the ground and every nearby living thing were reaching out in answer to the current flowing inside of him. Then it all seemed to merge into one overwhelming presence, made up of many beings, moving through his body toward his wounded shoulder. It surrounded the injured tissue, probing. His eyes bulged as something grabbed hold of his insides, and then things began to move, painfully. He stood rooted in place, his system shocked into stillness. When the pain became unbearable, it would slacken suddenly, as if whatever was controlling the bizarre occurrence could sense the limits of endurance within him. The near agony seemed to last forever, set to music by the sickening squish of shifting tissue in his right shoulder. He managed to look down just in time to see his skin fusing together over the wound. He did not remember going to his knees, yet found himself kneeling in front of the dwindling fire, gasping for breath. A surge of energy filled him, and he lurched to his feet, stumbling backward until he met with the wall of the cave.
What did you do to me?
I made you travel-worthy. He rotated his shoulder a few times. The soreness was completely gone. Feeling at the unbroken skin with his opposite hand, he could find no trace of where the arrow had been. His experience with being healed was extensive, to say the least. His closest friend, Matthias, was renowned for his potential in the art of mending. Medeus, Matthias's father, and head of the University of Internal Mending, had healed Jayden's wounds on a nearly weekly basis when they were growing up, and more recently in the practice yard where sparring accidents were commonplace. What Medeus had done, however, felt nothing like this.
That was...
He tried to think of a word to describe what had happened, but found himself at a complete loss.
You could have warned me.
Would it have prepared you, do you think?
I don't think anything could have prepared me for that.
My feeling exactly. I admit that mending is not my area of expertise. Are you coming with us, my dear? Spirion asked a still gaping Sidra. The sudden healing of the wound seemed to have disturbed her even more than it had Jayden. Mora will certainly be safer for you than here. I would not feel comfortable deserting you in the middle of troll country with no protection.
I cannot go with you. I must find my grandfather. I won't give up on him. Besides, I have my bow.
What would your grandfather be doing out here, girl?
There is an old temple near here where he spends much of his time. He would have gone there when Celis was attacked. At least, I thought it was near here. I know it sounds crazy, but it may have moved, or the land may have somehow shifted.
Old temple, you say? Asked the wizard with what appeared to be genuine curiosity. Have you seen this temple yourself?
Yes, my grandfather took me with him once.
Do you recall anything about it? Anything at all? She thought back.
I was 12 years old. I cannot recall anything unique about the building. Just a plain one-story stone structure with a domed roof and a library in the rear. It was dusty and old, the rock crumbling away in places. There was one thing. I remember a statue of an old man with a long beard atop a pedestal in the center of a dry fountain. His eyes were white. Not white like the rest of the statue, but smooth, like they were made of glass, and so bright they were almost painful to look at. Spirion was uncharacteristically silent, a look of what might be described as confusion on his face, which slowly transitioned into acceptance. "Do you know the place?" "I know it. I will lead us there." "Us? I want to help, of course, but it is important that we all go. It is not too far out of the way." "I don't understand. A moment ago you said that every minute we remain the enemy grows stronger.
Now we have time to track down grandfathers at mysterious moving temples?
You need not trouble yourself for the likes of me, your highness.
No, that's not what I meant.
You are the heir to the throne, after all, and I am but a low-born commoner whose troubles are no concern to the likes of you.
Your concerns are mine, as are those of all the people.
How magnanimous, your highness.
This time she accentuated her words with a proper curtsy. He could not tell if she was serious or if she was mocking him. A small twitch at the corner of her mouth, as she rose stiffly, was the only thing that spoiled her performance. She is mocking me. How can she make jokes at a time like this? If she can poke fun. Well, as long as this silly temple is not too far out of the way, good wizard, I suppose we could assist this helpless peasant girl. If the crown does not care for the rabble, no one will. The benevolent smile he gave her was as condescending as he could make it. Cedra responded by picking up the nearest piece of firewood.
Now that you are properly healed, your highness, I have no reservations about throwing this log at your inflated royal head.
I doubt that it would touch us. A simple block of wood would not dare encroach upon our thought-anointed brow.
Care to make a wager?
If the two of you are quite finished, do you think perhaps we could be on our way? I did not waste my time and energy healing you so that she could stick you with another sharp object.
The shocked look on both their faces, like children caught with their fingers in a cookie jar, was enough to make the ancient conjurer chuckle.
I am a wizard,
he muttered as he ducked to exit the cave. After sharing a mutually embarrassed grin, Jayden helped Cedra retrieve a few essential items, mostly preserved foodstuff, and soon they were climbing the last bit of the short scramble to the rim of the cave. They emerged to the sight of two more enormous mountain trolls standing to either side of the opening. Jayden instinctively stepped in front of Cedra in a protective manner before remembering that the brutes were under Spirion's control. Her snicker caused him to blush. Why am I blushing? It's what any man would do. I still don't trust those trolls. Gray clouds had moved in overnight, darkening the sky to a gloomy overcast and spitting down a sporadic sprinkle of cool early spring rain, while a thin fog had engulfed the little hillside. The ground was not too muddy yet, but it would be soon if the intermittent downpour persisted. The thought of walking all day through the mud was not a pleasant one. A loud whinny followed by a sharp snort announced the presence of horses, relieving their discouragement somewhat. Spirion stood in a small clearing at the base of the hill, feeding a handful of oats to a sleek gray mare, while an enormous black stallion grazed leisurely nearby. The mare's saddle was plain, with a covered object in the shape of some sort of stringed musical instrument strapped to the back. Bulging saddlebags hung to either side. The stallion's tack, on the other hand, was nothing short of garish. A shining silver pommel adorned an intricately worked saddle, and silver hooks connected everything together. It looked like the horse of a king. Neither animal was equipped with a bridle or reins.
I was not expecting to find two lost souls, but Zadosh can carry you both.
The black stallion shook his head as if to answer the contrary.
He's beautiful,
commented Cedra.
And smart. Too smart for his own good, I dare say.
Zadosh snorted. My horse is, Jayden began, remembering his trusty gelding Dapper fondly, most likely killed or lost when Eridan fell. He was from the best stock of Rose, but this stallion makes him look like a pony.
He is Facilian, Zadosh Muragale, Shadow of the Eagle.
The foreign dialect rolled so easily off his tongue that it made Jayden wonder about the wizard's origins. What long-dead civilization did he originally come from? What secrets did he know? He suddenly felt ashamed that he had been so bold when they first met. What right did he have to challenge the hero of so many stories? He decided he would try to be more respectful to the man and not question his actions so much. A funny thought occurred to him. I thought they rode camels in Facili. Spirion laughed.
So they do, but Zadosh is from eastern Facili, where they breed the finest horses in the world. You did not think that the Facilians charged into battle at the Split on their camels, did you?
I suppose not.
Zadosh comes from a long line of war horses, bred for the Sultan's personal stock.
How did you come by him, if I may ask?
Well, as to that, it was a simple matter of convincing Gadavan, Sultan of the Third Clan, that the horse's blood was impure. I wagered him that I could trace Zadosh's bloodline back to Erosian's sire, and I did. He should know better than to make bets with a mage. A cask of Brineport ale will make men do funny things. My welcome is questionable at the hold of the Third Clan, for the time being.
Why did you do it? Asked Sidra.
I needed a horse fit for a king, did I not?
Spirion replied with a pointed look to Jayden.
He is for me?
Of course. We cannot have you galloping into Eridan on the back of a goat to claim your throne, can we? If you appear riding Zadosh, there will be no question of who is in command.
Jayden laughed at the image of himself riding anywhere on Zadosh dressed as he was. In my present state, they'll think I stole him.
I thought of that as well. In the left saddlebag is an outfit that should give the right impression. I brought only one, so I suggest that you save it until we reach Mora. You can pick up more in the walled city. I know an excellent tailor who resides there, if he still lives, that is. It has been some time since I frequented this part of the world.
Jayden did not know what to say. He had seen so much kindness from total strangers, first from the Droka, then Sidra, after their initial meeting, of course, and now Spirion, to whom he had been exceedingly rude at first. It was more than he deserved. He promised himself that he would make all their efforts worthwhile by bringing peace and stability to his homeland, though first he knew he must bring war. It was daunting to think about, but with his 2 new companions by his side he did not feel quite so alone. And now he had a mount fit for the king that he meant to become. Spirion tossed Jayden an apple from one of the mare's saddlebags.
This should do the trick. The way to that one's heart is through his stomach.
Catching the apple, he presented the ripe red fruit to the giant horse with a steady hand. He had always been good with horses, approaching them on their own terms. Zadosh sniffed the offering, eyeing him suspiciously. Without warning, the warhorse snatched the apple in one quick bite and trotted past him to nuzzle at Sidra's shoulder.
I cannot say that I blame him for that.
Sidra smiled and patted the horse's cheek. Do you have another? Jayden asked with a look of wry determination. Spirion rummaged briefly through the same saddlebag and produced a second apple.
Last one. This had better do the trick. I do not think Maggie would enjoy carrying us both on her poor old back. You may have to hitch a ride on Uglag's shoulders.
One of the 4 mountain trolls turned his head briefly in response to the name, before resuming his expressionless examination of the surrounding trees. Jayden approached Zadosh slowly, holding the apple aloft. The horse sniffed at it gingerly for a moment, and once again lunged forward to snatch it away. Jayden expected it this time, and pulled it back out of reach, taking a bite for himself. The big horse shook out his mane fitfully.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want this?
Juice dripped from the apple as he held it out to the offended horse. Zadosh inched his head forward slowly, prepping for another lunge, and Jayden took a step backward. The game of cat and mouse continued for nearly 10 paces before Jayden slowed enough to let Zadosh have another chance at the object of his desire. The now thoroughly frustrated stallion took another snap at the apple, and Jayden pulled it aside like a matador. Grabbing the high pommel, he used the horse's own momentum to help propel himself up onto the animal's back. The black warhorse stood in shock for a split second, before launching into a series of bucks and rears aimed at dislodging the mischievous prince. But Jayden had broken horses before, and this horse wasn't wild, only stubborn. Zadosh finally stopped thrashing and looked over his shoulder to whinny loudly at the impertinent rider who had boarded him against his will. You set the rules, my friend. That is what you get for your lack of manners. Leaning forward, he offered the apple to Zadosh once more, this time letting him have it with a friendly pat to assure that there were no hard feelings, and a tenuous peace was made. Spirion shook his head in wonder.
Well done. Frightening, but well done. You have Ryanthorn blood in you, that is obvious. It will be a miracle if I can keep you alive long enough to get you to Mora.
Jayden gave the wizard his most dashing smile, then turned to present his hand to Sidra. My lady, he offered. My lord, she accepted, gracefully taking the proffered hand and swinging up into position behind him. The strange procession led by 2 mountain trolls eventually made its way through the early morning fog and into the deep shadows of the crystal woods. There was an eerie feel to the forest that only grew as the morning dragged on. They snacked as they rode, a combination of Cedra's jerky and some pastries the wizard pulled from a hidden pocket in his robes. Jayden was not picky, since being starved nearly to death in the sorcerer's dungeon. The flaky crust of the pastries mixed with the berry jam they housed as he chewed, making his mouth water with delight. They were so good that he nearly asked Spirion what else he had hidden in his robes, but decided the question might be rude. There was no clear path to follow, so they wove their way through the trees behind the wizard, who seemed to know exactly where he was going. He led them in a northwesterly direction, toward the lake, not the way Jayden expected. If the temple lay in this direction, it could not be close to Mora. The drizzle turned to a light sprinkle that soon stopped altogether, and the first tendrils of sunlight pushed their way through the clouds, thinning the dense white of the fog around them. One of the trolls that had jogged on ahead to inspect the forest pulled them up short, waving his enormous arms for them to halt. He shouted in troll tongue, pointing emphatically ahead of them.
"What is he saying?"
Cedra asked. Spirion was about to answer when another of the lead trolls bolted out of the forest into their path, joining his comrade in a chorus of grunted shouts.
"He says we must not go this way."
"Why not?"
"Because he is afraid of spiders."
The second troll curled his lip into a challenging snarl, taking a menacing step toward them, and Spirion rose up in his stirrups in response. The troll suddenly lifted his arms over his head as if to ward off an unseen attacker, stumbling backward. After a few moments he lowered his arms again, an expression of indifference returning to his hard face. Nothing had happened that they could see, but the effect was too immediate for the wizard not to have done something.
"What did you do to him?"
Cedra asked, echoing Jayden's thought.
"Nothing really. I simply helped him imagine the horrible things that I could do to him if I had a mind to."
Spirion turned a raptor gaze on the first troll, who bowed his head as a sign that he too would cooperate.
"We go forward."
The 2 remaining trolls materialized from what was left of the thinning misty fog, taking positions in the rear as if summoned to do so, and the party moved on at a brisk pace. The forest grew denser as they went, the wood older. Enormous trunks rose hundreds of feet, connecting with a great canopy of leaves and needles, broken only by the occasional glimpse of the sky above. The new growth of spring did not touch this underworld of the crystal woods, the giant trees long ago claiming dominance over all nutrients in the area. There were the occasional sightings of rabbits or a deer, but nothing out of place, until Jayden saw a brilliant shimmer in the distance that caught his eye for a split second and was gone.
"What was that?"
he whispered.
"The gardeners of the forest are close. There is no need to whisper. They know we are here. Touch nothing, and they will not harm us."
Jayden shared a quick look with Cedra, seeing his concern mirrored in her eyes. There was another flash ahead, then more to the sides. Soon they came from everywhere. They saw finally, as they neared the source of the mysterious light, that enormous webs were strung from branch to branch, and even trunk to trunk, of the trees. The light that managed to pierce the foliage above reflected off the dew that still clung to the gossamer strands, creating brilliant multicolored light that gleamed brightly in contrast to the dark underbelly of the woods. Spirion weaved his way ahead, seemingly unconcerned, while the trolls became visibly more anxious with every step. Deeper into the webs they went, until they were surrounded, caged in a prison of opaque ropes and sheets of white silken lace. They could hear the scuttling of unseen bodies, invisible presences lurking behind the eerily beautiful collage of webbing and sparkling prisms. Eventually, they reached a spot where there was no going forward. The nervous trolls looked to Spirion for guidance, their confidence obviously shaken near the point of breaking. The wizard produced a knife from somewhere in his robe and handed it to the nearest troll, motioning for him to cut a path forward. The troll hesitated, then, as slowly and carefully as he could with his big, clumsy hands, began to saw the web from top to bottom. The fabric snapped as he broke through the last bit with the knife. sending a small ripple through the surrounding webs. Dew showered them in the form of a thin mist, in which Jayden could see a pristine rainbow that hovered above the ground for no more than an instant and was gone. The scuttling sounds grew louder. Spirion kept them moving at a leisurely pace, though it was clear that the trolls wanted to go faster. There were more places they had to stop and cut their way through, and each time the noises came a little closer, until finally they could make out nearby shapes through the silken sheets and the trees. Most of the shapes were small, but some were massive, their shadows blocking out the light. Multi-legged silhouettes closed in on them until it was dark as twilight. The lead troll parted another of the thick strands with the knife, and the web fell back to reveal a fat, round spider roughly the size of a melon. Pointed fangs protruded from a maw bristling with coarse hair, and dark red stripes were barely visible against its black, shiny body. The troll yelped, thrusting the blade forward and bearing it to the hilt in the creature's bulbous belly. Slimy yellow guts immediately began to bulge out around the steel, oozing over the troll's thick fingers and the hilt of the knife. The spider struck back quickly, before the troll could pull the blade free, sinking its fangs into the hard, knotted flesh on the back of its attacker's hand. In one swift motion, the troll flung the spider into the air and free of the knife. It caught in a web overhead, writhing in the throes of death.
"You stupid brute!"
The air grew thick, the only sound the shrill squeak of the dying creature screaming in protest against its early demise. Then, as if the floodgates had been opened, the spiders poured in around them, an unending sea of arachnids of every size, most of them the same shiny black and red as the first, swarming through the webs to surround them.
"Move!"
shouted the wizard. He did not need to tell the trolls. They bolted forward with the first wave, flinging their massive arms out to clear a path through the sticky webbing. The horses were right behind, barely managing to keep pace with the sprinting trolls. Jayden would not have believed that creatures so big could run that fast, but fear seemed to be an amazing motivator for them. It might have been comical to see the four enormous trolls running from a group of spiders, if some of those spiders were not half as big as they were, and weren't chasing him, too. He reached up to brush a stray piece of discarded webbing from his hair.
"Touch nothing," Spirion growled in response, "and stay close."
The wizard had not once turned around. He must have eyes in the back of his head. Onward they galloped, ducking to avoid the shredded strands of webbing left in the troll's wake. Sidra clung to him tightly. He estimated that they must have gone at least a few hundred paces before the webs began to thin, and the spiders were left behind for good. The company eventually slowed to a halt, and Spirion immediately began to berate the trolls, cursing them in their own language. The trolls themselves were wrapped in spider webs, like monstrous, misshapen caterpillars in cocoons, flinging themselves about the ground and rolling in an effort to remove the sticky substance. Their tough skin was covered in bite marks. Jayden was wondering how he himself had escaped the ordeal unscathed, when he felt something move lightly on his forearm. He stared down at the little black and red spider that had hitched a ride with him, not daring to move. If he was fast enough... He swiped at it and felt a sharp pain as the creature was brushed away.
"Have you been bitten?"
Spirion asked instantly, the look in his eyes saying plainly that he already knew the answer. Yes, but it was only a little one.
"Those are the worst, my boy."
The bite marks left by the spider were small, but a thin red ring was beginning to grow around them, and his arm tingled. "I only tried to flick him off me."
"I told you not to touch anything. I meant that doubly for the spiders. They do not bite unless provoked. The crystal spiders are the guardians of this forest. The glimmer of their webs is a welcome sight to travelers, a sure sign that no creature of the jealous thoughts is near. It is from them that these woods and the mountains derive their names."
"I did not know that." His arm was beginning to burn now, and he was quite thirsty. He dismounted to stand by the wizard, who was already off his mare. "Are they poisonous? Am I swaying, or is the ground moving?"
"Fatal. Let me see your arm."
Jayden lifted his arm, with some difficulty, so that it could be inspected.
"I will warn you this time. This is going to feel very strange.
The wave of warmth hit him stronger and faster this time than the last, and the familiar tingling began. Though he had experienced the sensation before, it still did not lessen the shock of feeling like he was one with everything around him. He could sense the alien substance that had been injected into his blood, and felt it being pulled out into his surroundings, diffusing into so many beings that it was rendered harmless. He was once again left breathless from the healing.
"Thank you,"
he managed. His head felt clearer now than he could remember. Everything around him was vivid, alive.
This is a serious matter, boy. You are the only heir to the throne of Crysin, and you would have died from that bite had I not been here. You must be more careful with yourself.
In all fairness, sir, I do not think that I would have galloped through a nest of deadly spiders if you had not led me there. Spirion was speechless for a moment.
Ungrateful. Mount up. I plan to reach the temple by nightfall.
"Wait!" cried Sidra. She had climbed down from Zadosha's back and was examining the trolls.
What is it now?
"What about them?"
The trolls had not risen from the ground. In fact, all 4 of them were beginning to shake and foam at the mouth.
What about them?
"They are dying."
They have served their purpose. We are nearly to the temple.
"You can't just let them die."
He looked at her curiously.
Why not? They are instruments of those who mean us harm, though not as vile as some. They would gladly kill us all if they had the chance.
"And I would kill them gladly if they were to attack me. But this is not right. This is murder."
Spirion looked at her for a long moment.
You are right,
he said finally.
Your compassion sets you apart from their kind. Your empathy makes you human.
The wizard bent to inspect the trolls, touching each in turn. The whole process took only a few minutes, but the effect was miraculous. They stopped shaking and rose to their feet, blank-faced and showing no sign that anything had happened. Spirion barked a few words to them in their own language, and all 4 turned as one and trotted off toward the northeast, disappearing into the wood.
"Thank you,"
she said.
You are quite welcome, my dear,
Spirion replied, a look of smug satisfaction on his face. The look immediately aroused her suspicion.
"Where are they going?"
she asked.
I no longer desire their services, and I could not leave them free to gather their tribe mates and follow us, so I sent them on a simple errand. They will be compelled to complete the task before they return home.
"What task?"
I sent them to fetch a small trinket for me.
Sidra obviously had lingering doubts, but turned to Mount Zadosh anyway. As soon as she was no longer looking in his direction, Spirion conspiratorially mouthed to Jayden,
"From the top of Mount Motherwen."
He blinked. The creatures would be dead long before reaching their destination. He felt like he should inform Sidra of the wizard's deception, but they were trolls. The thought of being caught from behind by an angry horde of them was not an appealing one. Anyway, he reasoned, they had as good a chance against the mountain as he did of taking back his homeland from the most powerful mage alive. He decided to let the matter lie. They moved on at a walk to let the horses rest from their earlier adventure, though they hardly seemed to need it, and continued on their way to the temple. The forest thinned, and they made better time not having to weave their way around so many obstacles. Zadosh and Maggie soon wanted to run, so they let them break into an easy canter. At midday they came to an open field where they decided to stop beneath the boughs of a lone apple tree, its buds beginning to swell in anticipation of the warmer weather to come. Matting down a patch of tall grass on which to sit, they went to work preparing lunch. At Crysin Castle, Jayden had been spoiled with the best of what a rich kingdom had to offer, but the spread set out by the wizard and Sidra was far from meager fare. Spirion carried with him a variety of morsels from so many regions of the world that he thought the wizard must either do nothing but travel around collecting food, or had somehow magicked them into his packs. There were nuts, cheeses, dried fruits and meats, and even desserts. Most of it was excellent, but some he had a hard time imagining was meant to be eaten by humans, such as a reed out of which Spirion shaved the soft, bitter innards with a small knife. Jayden brought up the fact that they were running low on water, but Spirion said enigmatically that he did not think it would be a problem. Indeed, his water skin never seemed to go down. Something else had been troubling him, and he felt that now was as good a time to bring it up as any. "You must have traveled the wood at night to arrive when you did. Isn't that incredibly dangerous?"
"Dangerous for you,"
replied the wizard, picking an errant crumb from the point of his short beard with distaste.
"Not for me. Still, I did start the journey with 6 trolls."
"What made you brave the dark?"
asked Cedra.
"I had to find our young prince before he disappeared again."
Spirion frowned.
"He has a nasty habit of doing that."
"How did you find me?" Jayden asked as he munched on a bit of hardtack. "Was it by magic?"
No, nothing so mysterious as that. A sparrow saw you appear out of thin air, so he claims, and told an eagle about it. The eagle, being a wise bird, deemed it important enough to pass the information along to me."
"You can speak with eagles?"
asked once again wide-eyed Cedra. That feeling of annoyance which seemed to come over him every time the redhead became overly impressed with the wizard threatened to surface again, but he suppressed it. It was not jealousy, he told himself.
"Yes,"
Spirion replied as soon as he had completely chewed and swallowed a stick of some long, crisp vegetable.
"And other animals. They come to me more often now."
"Why is that?"
she asked. Spirion cleansed his palate with a sip of wine from an elegant pewter goblet and eyed them both intently.
"I believe it is time to reveal certain truths. I do not mean to worry you prematurely, but taking back Crysin may be only the beginning of what we face. I tell this to you too, young lady, because it concerns us all. The coming threat is to every person in Alnorda. The war between the great thoughts and the jealous thoughts approaches a new zenith, one such as has not been seen in many generations of mortals. The signs are everywhere, and grow stronger every day. As the designs of the two sides come to fruition, these signs become more obvious. I fear that we have little time left before events unfold on a scale not seen in thousands of years, if ever. The split is not eternal. It was a temporary solution to an immediate problem, an act of desperation to save humanity. It is held open by the power of the wizards who created it, by me, in part, along with the rest of my order. To maintain the unnatural separation, we draw from the land, its people, and from ourselves. Grisland was our ally in this cause. For whatever reason, I believe he has relinquished that part of his power which contributed to the effort, drawing it slowly back within himself, a trickle at a time, year after year, so that the rest of us would not notice. In doing so, he has not only regained his full power, but has placed an enormous strain on the rest of us. I fear that one day soon we may grow so weak that we lose our control over the chasm." What Spirion was suggesting was unfathomable. The split was as much a part of their world as a mountain range, a sea, or a desert. More so. That something so massive could simply cease to exist was more than disturbing. It shook the very foundations of their reality. There was nothing that had occurred in their lifetimes that they could even relate to such a cataclysmic event. "What will happen if you lose control of it?" Jayden asked. "It will close, of course, and our world will be whole again."
"That cannot happen,"
Cedra interjected.
"What about the demons?"
"They will come as they always have, and there will be nothing to slow their advance."
"Did my father know about this?"
"I doubt it. The situation was not so grave before Grisland's betrayal. Events have been propelled tenfold because of his actions. I can only surmise that he has made a treaty with the other side."
"The other side? You mean the demons?"
"I mean one of their masters. A demon lord, to be precise."
"But how could anyone do such a thing?"
"Grisland craves power. If not for Alamon, he never would have relinquished his hold on Neferin, his kingdom in ancient Sidon. His wish was always to rule humanity. In this, among other things, we have never seen eye to eye.
Why did he follow Alamon if he is so hungry for power? Jayden asked.
To put it simply, Alamon scares the thoughts out of him.
Because he is so powerful?
Asked Sidra.
That, and his presence.
A fond smile came across Spirion's face.
You would have to stand before the Father yourself to truly understand it. You cannot lie to him. You can hide nothing from him. Standing before him is almost like standing before the great thoughts themselves. He is the closest conduit to their will that the world has ever known, and I would follow him freely to my death.
I mean no disrespect, but where is Alamon now? Why hasn't he dealt with Grisland? Spirion sighed, obviously troubled.
I can only surmise that he is waiting for a sign from the thoughts. Never fear, he is our general in this war, as he has been in so many before this. When the time comes, he will join us, and we will be triumphant. Until then, we must fight our battles without the benefit of his guidance. That is all we can do.
Spirion's words gave Jayden some hope. Alamon. The Rosians regarded him as the walking embodiment of the great thoughts. It was said, even in Crysin, that the Wizard of the Tower spent his days speaking directly to them. If Spirion was convinced that Alamon would come to their aid, then maybe there was a chance to bring some stability back to the world in time for the Day of Darkness. Crysin would never again be the same place he knew as a boy, but perhaps it could be strong again. Perhaps there could at least be peace within, if not without. The wizard neatly packed away the remaining bits of food and lit his pipe, leaning back against the apple tree almost casually. He took in a drag of his tobacco and blew the smoke out the side of his mouth in a long release, and they spoke of less serious matters for a time. Sidra told them about growing up in Celis, her eccentric grandfather, and how one battle at the Split had claimed the lives of both her father and her brother, her mother passing soon after from an ailment of the mind. Jayden touched on some of the finer points of his childhood, but his grief was too recent to go on for long. Spirion even surprised them by speaking, almost sentimentally, of the kingdom of Susia he had once ruled, and the people who had lived there long before the creation of the Split. If anyone had passed them, not that many sane people would ever willingly travel so deep into the Crystal Woods, they would have thought of the trio as nothing more than three friends relaxing on what had turned into an almost pleasant spring day. Jayden was developing a feel for riding Zadosh, the way the big warhorse responded to his slightest touch, and a sense of trust was beginning to grow between them. Spirion led them down a slight hill into a wide ravine, where a narrow trail gradually developed by the side of a quiet stream. They followed it west for a time, toward the lake, before it veered back to the northwest. A series of misshapen sticks protruded from the ground at irregular angles by the side of the small creek, which on further inspection proved to be bones. The unrecognizable corpses of animals of all shapes and sizes were everywhere, strewn randomly on both sides of the trail. He felt Sidra shift uneasily behind him as they came across the bleached skeleton of an animal that must have been the size of a small cottage. What was that?
A trachodon, I believe,
Sidra replied.
Few have ever seen one and lived.
Well, it can't hurt us now, said Jayden, trying to be comforting.
It is not the trachodon that worries me. I am more concerned about what could have possibly killed it.
The further they went, the fresher the bones became. Finally, a wretched smell announced the presence of a very fresh kill, with scraps of maggot-riddled meat still rotting off the bone. I think we've wandered into some kind of lair. Should we not turn back?
This is no lair, Spirion piped in calmly. At least not for one creature alone. Predators wait by the stream until their prey gets thirsty, and then...
The look he gave sent shivers down their spines. What is to keep us from becoming prey?
These creatures were made by the jealous thoughts, twisted imitations of the animals in the forest. They cannot stand the sunlight. They believe that the great thoughts ride on beams of light, waiting for them to come forth from their holes so they can be killed.
Is it true? Asked Sidra.
In a way, the wizard replied enigmatically. The light reveals them for what they are, abominations.
Are we safe here, then? Spirion blinked, eyeing the surroundings as if he had just woken and found himself there.
Quite safe, I should think. The forest is a different place in the daylight hours.
Jayden had to bite his tongue not to bring up their close encounter with the spiders, which had happened very much in the daylight hours.
I've always wondered why the most dangerous creatures could not be found during the day, said Sidra, frowning. But aren't trolls the children of the jealous thoughts as well?
Ah, yes, but they are the chosen children, you see, my dear, along with the imps. The jealous thoughts tend to play favorites. Trolls and imps believe that they are better than all other creatures because their creators have led them to believe so. That is how they compel them to organize and make war on the other races, by instilling in them a sense of superiority. They do not enjoy the direct light of the sun, but they tolerate its rays in defiance.
Despite the wizard's unflappable confidence, Jayden checked to make sure his sword was loose in the sash at his waist, and remained on high alert as they rode. It did not help that Spirion had taken to whistling a merry tune between snacking on odd bits of this and that pulled from his saddlebags. Hadn't they just had lunch? He always seemed to be eating or fidgeting with something idly, his calm demeanor out of place in the gruesome surroundings. Eventually, they left the creekside boneyard behind. The trees soon transitioned from pines and firs to stands of laurel, which looked to have once been planted in rows. They came to a halt at a crossroads, the new, wider road disappearing into the forest to the left and right of them.
Welcome to the Temple of the Prophet.
Spirion's monotone pronouncement clearly indicated that he had mixed feelings about being at the temple. Sidra stared at him as if he had grown a third eye.
There is no temple here,
she exclaimed.
I have been to this very spot, albeit by a less direct route. This is where I began my search. There is nothing here. I was sure this was the place, but it's not.
A necessary deception. The temple is not visible to the naked eye. A barrier was made with illusion lore to protect it from unwanted intrusion. Alamon saw the need for it, and the spell, if you want to call it that, was placed here shortly before the split was created, so that the temple could only be found by one specific mortal being.
Illusion lore was the same magic that the sorcerers had used on the people during the Illusion Wars, magic granted to them by the jealous thoughts, magic banned by the Wizards' Council, the same magic that Hycenthor had used on him, and he had eventually seen through. Who would have done this for Alamon? Jayden asked with a sour taste in his mouth. And how could they be trusted?
Wise questions, Prince. It was I who cast the spell that sealed away the Temple of the Prophet. I used the magic of the jealous thoughts against them, so to speak. Think of it as hiding an object in plain sight, or perhaps hiding it in your enemy's own fortress where they would never think to look for it. While they have been out scouring the countryside, it has been buried in their backyard all along. There was a price, however.
What price?
Sidra asked, concern etched on her delicate features. Spirion's eyes went far away, his expression pained.
The great thoughts no longer speak to me. The jealous thoughts could use me as a conduit to spy on them if they did. I am forever shunned from the glory of their voices until death. Yet one more sacrifice that I was willing to make to ensure the future of humankind.
Sidra placed a comforting hand on the wizard's shoulder. After he had regained his composure, he gave them a reassuring smile and held out a palm for each of them.
Take my hands, and I will lead you forward, young ones.
Sidra gasped when her hand touched the wizard's. Something about her reaction when the temple was revealed triggered a memory in Jayden of when he had touched her hand that first time, when she claimed that he had appeared to her as a demon. An illusion broken.
Your Highness?
Spirion raised an inquiring eyebrow when Jayden did not take his hand right away, but he did not need the wizard's hand. The way ahead was as plain as day to him, paved with cobblestones that were old but not worn, with tufts of grass poking up all around them. The path led only 20 paces to a wrought iron gate, through which he could see a large fountain in an open courtyard that fronted a medium-sized stone building with a domed roof. If what Spirion said was true, and Jayden had no reason to doubt him, he should not be able to see any of it. It certainly appeared that Cedra could not see it without assistance, so why could he? Was it because of his heritage, this stone of fire? He took the proffered hand anyway, hoping to avoid the inevitable scrutiny that would come by denying it. Spirion's eyes widened. The wizard knew. The sun was still high in the sky as they started down the path to the temple of the prophet. 2 sets of wide blue eyes watched from the concealment of the laurels as the little company shimmered, then disappeared into thin air.
"Who's there?"
Quandus sat straight up in his chair, roused from an unscheduled nap. Somebody had said something. He was sure of it this time. His jerky movement had almost upset the remains of his lunch, consisting of a wooden bowl with just a bit of soup beginning to crust the bottom, a napkin with some biscuit crumbs atop it, and a tin mug half filled with lukewarm tea. He hated making messes because he was the only one around to clean them up, something he did with only modest frequency. Using the simply carved oak back of his chair to help support his aging frame, he rose and thoroughly examined every nook and cranny of the little room. The oil in the sconces was low, the lamps beginning to dim. It was careless of him to waste his dwindling fuel supply, he knew, but he just could not seem to put the book down lately, not even to douse the lights when periodic bouts of sleep overcame him. Scrolls and leather-bound tomes lined the shelves, which hid nearly every inch of the seamless rock walls in a well-planned state of disarray. He knew each volume intimately and could point to it without looking. They had all been neglected this past month. For the book. Nothing seemed out of place, and even in the flickering light he could see that no one else was in the room. He was alone.
"Of course I'm alone,"
he muttered through the flowing white beard that was the pride of his old age.
"I am always alone, and it suits me just fine."
Still, there was no denying that he had heard something. A man's voice or a woman's voice, he could not tell. Was he finally going crazy, cooped up here for so long? Sometimes he wondered. Boom! The knocker sounded against the main door, causing his heart to leap into his throat. It was so loud. Who would have designed such a loud knocker for so small a temple? He had never heard the sound before, having never had a visitor, and hoped that he never would again. That the thing actually still worked was a surprise in itself. He straightened his shirt and brushed a spot of dirt from the sleeve, feeling as old as any book in the room, gathering dust.
"I have had a good life. If today is the end of me, then so be it. The enemy will set me free today."
That was what the book said, and the book was never wrong. The dust, the mysterious voices, the prophetic book, what did it all mean? Who had lived here, and why did they abandon the place? He may never know now, and that irritated him. If only the mysterious author would have left a signature, or some mark of where they had come from. Boom!
Hold on, hold on! The enemy could at least have some manners.
But after what he had seen in Celis, he knew that they did not. A cramp in his bad leg caused him to limp slightly as he passed through the large round main chamber into the little entryway. Sunlight beaming through the elongated stained glass windows caused multicolored illusions to dance across the tile floor, the only light in the room. Motes of dust stirred in his wake. He reached the door and paused briefly, with a quick prayer to the great thoughts to be good to him should he soon come face to face with them. Perhaps his wife and daughter would be waiting for him on the other side. It had been so many years since he had last seen them that their faces were sometimes unclear when he tried to picture them, and that upset him greatly. The large wooden door creaked as he opened it. 3 slobbering demons stood before him, their eyes strangely calm. He had never examined one so closely. Now that he was face to face with 3 of them, he noticed something odd. They appeared insubstantial, almost blurry. He wiped the residue of sleep from his eyes and looked again. They were blurry.
"If you are going to kill me, please be quick about it,"
he told them matter-of-factly.
"Otherwise, I have a wagon load of reading to do."
The creatures shared a peculiar glance, and then the center demon slowly, hesitantly, reached out one razor-sharp claw toward him, placing it on his shoulder. Quandus blinked. Standing before him in the demon's place was a sight he had prayed nightly to the great thoughts to one day see again, his only granddaughter, Cedra. She appeared travel-worn and malnourished, but her crystal-blue eyes, near mirrors of his own, shone as intensely as ever. 2 men accompanied her. He squinted at the younger man directly in front of him with a hand on his shoulder, and recognition slowly came.
Ah, yes, I hoped it might be you, Your Highness. The book told me all about you. Would you like something to eat? You all look horribly thin.